All right, welcome to our third and final year-end review class. We did two of these earlier in December. They're exactly the same, so you didn't miss anything. A little bit different format than we used in the past. We pack a lot into 2 hours, so I'm going to go relatively quickly through these. I do want you to know that you have the PowerPoint slides are in the materials that you can download, so you have that. I've also, for your convenience, provided you a download link to the year-end procedures government forms guide, the release notes for version 20.3, and then a little kind of newsletter article, Word document that explains how to use file tools to back up your data. So all of those are available in the materials section of your Go to Training panel. You should see the word materials with the number 4 in parentheses and blue hyperlinks available to be able to download those right from those hyperlinks. You can also go back to your email reminder invitation. There's a materials link in that email that you received with the reminder. You can download from that email as well. All right. The year-end version update. If you're not already aware, Sage released a year-end version 20.3. On December 14th. They were a little late getting it out, so everybody's been kind of scrambling. You do not have to have the year-end update installed in order to run payroll in 2020, or I'm sorry, 2021. We're in a new year. Happy New Year, by the way. You do not have to have it installed. You only need to have downloaded the payroll tax file from your payroll module. So you don't have to have the year-end version installed. You do have to have the year-end version installed in order to run W-2s using Atrix and the 1099s with the new NEC miscellaneous 1099 form. So you have to have it installed and your data upgraded prior to running those tasks. The supported upgrade paths, that means what version are you on now and can you upgrade directly to version 20.3? You must be on version 18 something, so 18.1, 18.3, 18.4. You can upgrade directly to version 20.3, and if you're on a version prior to that, you will probably need to upgrade first to version 18 before upgrading to version 20. There is a 13-minute video. There's a hyperlink to that. You can also get to that from the knowledge base. There's a video that explains what's in the year-end release. It's very informative. I do recommend watching it. It talks about the important changes in payroll and in accounts payable. And then also I've provided you with some knowledge base article numbers there for information on COVID pays. If you've had to pay employees who've been out sick or out taking care of family members due to COVID, there were some setups that you could have made this year, or last year rather, in your system to be able to track COVID pays for W-2 reporting purposes. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't kind of backtrack, but it might be a little bit more difficult. So, but there are those knowledge base articles that you can look up in the knowledge base to get that information. All right, our agenda for today is we are going to talk about the year-end version update, which I just kind of did a little bit. We're going to look at a little more detailed look at closing procedures for payroll, accounts payable, and general ledger. And then we're going to kind of do just a real quick overview of the closing procedures in the other modules and discuss your help options. Where can you go to get help when you need help? That's very important. All right, what do year-end processes do? Year-end processes get the software ready to accumulate transactions and totals for the new year. So for instance, if you use Sage 300 Construction and Real Estate to process payroll and produce payroll checks, it stores totals for the employees year to date and prior year. So I can run W-2s for last year or for this year. And the year is determined by whatever's in your payroll settings. So if the year in your payroll settings says 2020 still, because you haven't closed the year, you could actually go back and run W-2s for 2019 again. Not that I would hope you'd have to do that. But when you close the year, it copies the year-to-date totals into the prior year column for everything, the gross pay, the pays, the deductions, the fringes, the taxes, everything. And then it zeroes out or blanks out the year-to-date column to begin accumulating in that column in the new year. So that's what that does. You have two types of closing procedures. You have a mandatory closing procedure where you absolutely cannot do something in the current year if you haven't run the close year task. So for instance, in payroll, I can't, I can print a check for 2021, but I can't post it because there's no place to put it. If payroll's still in 2020, there's no next year accumulator. General ledger, while you don't have to close general ledger in order to be able to post transactions in 2021, you still wouldn't be able to print financial statements. So general ledger will post up to 6 months into the future, but you can't run a financial statement for a future period. So you do have to close it to run financial statements. There are some other optional closing procedures. In AP and AR, for instance, there are some there's a close year process. You don't have to run it. It rolls the totals for the vendors and the customers, but it doesn't stop you from posting transactions until you get beyond the next year accumulator. So we'll talk about that at the end of the class. But then there's some optional housekeeping processes, things like archiving data, moving jobs, moving checks to history, those sorts of things. If you archive data, there may be multiple activities that happen over multiple days. It can take time to move that data. So you want to plan plenty of time, and schedule that with your users, knowing that they may need to be out of the system for several hours while you're moving data. So sometimes that's an evening and maybe even weekend process for some people. All right, payroll closing processes. Hopefully by now, the 7th of January, 2021, you've already finished processing and posting all of your payroll checks for 2020. If someone comes to you today and says, I need you to cut Joe a bonus check and you need to date it in December, if you've already closed the year in payroll and you've already downloaded your payroll taxes, you're going to have to probably do some workarounds in order to be able to do that. So contact your Ethos business partner consultant or whoever can help you with that, and we can walk you through what you'd have to do there. Now, if you haven't closed the year yet and you haven't downloaded the new 2021 tax file, you're probably okay to continue to do that. But so you want to be sure everything's posted. I encourage users to run a report or look at an inquiry in the new transaction file and make sure you don't have unprocessed or unposted checks hanging out in that file. I've seen some people with years worth that didn't even realize they were there. So make sure everything got posted. Go ahead and download and install the year-end release, that version 20.3. That may involve, that's not a quick process. It's not something that happens in minutes. It takes a couple of hours, sometimes several hours. It may involve your IT people or your Ethos consultant to help you do that. So you download and install the year-end release, you upgrade your data, you're going to process and post that last payroll if you haven't done it. You can do the installation, as I said, of the year-end version at any time. Doesn't have to be before year-end, doesn't have to be before processing the first payroll. You can also run your quarterly reports and your year-end reports at any time. You don't have to do them before or after you close payroll, because you can always run those reports for the prior year, even after you've closed payroll. And then if required, you're going to generate your ACA reports if you run those out of the system. You're going to back up your payroll files. That's why I've given you those instructions on how to use file tools to back up your files, because we do recommend that you back up the payroll master file before you run that close year task. Now, if you've already done it, you're probably fine, but we do recommend that you do that. Then you close the year, and then you download your tax changes from Payroll Tools, download taxes. And there's a little checkbox that you can check to update taxes when you're done. Sage has no clue what your state unemployment rates are. So you're going to manually update your state unemployment rates once you get those new tax rates, as well as any workers' comp rate rates that you need to change. So you'll do that manually as well. All right, you can begin processing payroll in the new year. You can begin entering time at any time. You've probably already done that if you've already had your first payroll. You don't have to wait to download the taxes or to close the year to enter time. However, you don't want to process that first payroll until you know that your tax updates have been installed. And I always do a check after I download and update taxes. I go into setup taxes and I look at the federal withholding tax and confirm that the effective date is 1/1/2021, just to make sure that they updated properly. You can, after you're processing payroll for the new year, you can print or electronically file your W-2s at any time, either before or after you close the year. You don't have to do it before you close the year. So if you were panicking on December 31st that your W-2s weren't done, you don't have to worry about that. We do recommend printing all of those W-2 files to PDF as well as to paper if you're going to actually print paper and not have Atrix do all the filing for you. So keep a PDF file of those. So if you need to reprint or something, you've got that in a digital copy. If you get the prompt when you go to launch the W-2 Atrix generator, if you get the prompt that says, that there's an update available, the answer to that question is always yes, because Atrix maintains all of the government forms for any government form you can imagine, federal, state, municipality, all those forms. And they get changes from those authorities sometimes daily this time of year because they're tweaking those forms up until the last minute. And so you want to be sure that you have the latest version of that form. So always answer yes to that. And then optionally, after everything's done, after your W-2s are done and you know you're not going to have to do any corrected W-2s, heaven forbid, you can optionally move older checks to history. Now, a lot of people don't do this, but there's really no reason to keep more than the current year and the immediate prior year checks in your current transaction file, because you can always report on older checks from the history file. So it just makes a cleaner, smaller footprint for running reports. And it takes a lot less time to run your reports if you don't have all that information in the current transaction file. Okay, I'm going to get out of my PowerPoint here and I'm going to go into the software and we're going to look at the process of generating W-2s. The first thing you want to do is you want to look at your W-2 form. So the Atrix software integrates, it's a third-party product that integrates with your Sage 300 construction and real estate software. And it uses the W-2 form in your payroll software to pull those columns into the Atrix grid. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll see that when it comes along, but you want to check that W-2 form. Now, if you've downloaded 2020 version 20.3, the change that you would have seen is this. It only showed, I think it was 3 box 14 rows before, and when you install version 20.3, it adds 3 additional box 14 rows for you so that you have more room. Now, it's not going to print all those rows on one W-2. If you have more than, I think it's 2 lines in box 14, maybe it's 4, it's been a while since, we'll see it when it comes along, it creates a second W-2. So each employee might have 2 W-2 forms, because it's kind of how like the state, if you've got employees that work in multiple states, you can only have 2 states on a W-2, and then it produces a second one for the second 2 states or whatever. It works the same way with box 14. So that's what that will do for you. Let me go back to my pointer here. All right. And what you'll do is, just to kind of go back, if you have to report COVID pays on your on your W-2s. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to create the formulas. Now, there's a knowledge base article for this that explains how to create these formulas. And the formula I've created is this one that's EPSLA $511. I have no idea why. This is it's some sort of code for something. So Sage instructs you to create a formula that has that text inside the formula. And I've named that formula EPSLA 511. And I have not tested this. I did this literally minutes before our session here because I'd forgotten that I hadn't done it. It's upgrade season. Sorry, it's upgrade season for us, so I'm a little busy. When I go into my W-2 form now, the instructions, according to the knowledge base, are to come into box 14. In that left-hand column, click on formulas and select that formula. Then in the amount column, which is the second column over, you're going to click on your pays and you're going to select the COVID pay. Now I only set up COVID sick in my sample data here, and I have one little check in there. So I have that EPSLA 511 formula over here, and I have my COVID sick pay in the amount column here. And then I'm just going to save my W-2 form. Typically, you are not going to mess with any of the items above box 10. So through box 10, those are maintained typically by the system. You can throw in as many box 12s and as box 14s as you need in order to accomplish your reporting requirements. All right, once you have your W-2 format set up and confirmed that you have everything included that you need to have included there, you're going to go to Tasks, Federal E-File, and Reporting. All right, this is the pop-up. It says I've got an update available. I updated a few days ago, so there have been changes since the last time I updated. I'm going to go ahead and click yes to do the automatic update. It's going to go out to the internet. It's going to find, the Atrix website. It's going to go to their forms, and I'm going to do an automatic update. Let's connect. Oops, and it made my screen go blank for a minute there. And it's going out and it's gathering all the forms, looking through all of them, determining which ones need to be updated. And these are all the forms. So there's some program files, there are some federal forms. I've got Arizona forms as well as other states that have been updated since the last time I did this. So it's going to go through and it's going to update those for me. I somehow have managed to lose my chat box. So if you've sent me a chat, oh, there it is. I got it. Okay, sorry, I had it hidden there. I'm trying to monitor that while these things are going on here. And it does take a minute. And you haven't done this for a while, go ahead and do it because it can take a couple of minutes. If you have not used Atrix in the past, you should be aware that this does require a logon in order to use Atrix to e-file for you. So if you've not created that logon, we'll see at the end of this demonstration how you can do that. Okay, it's finished. So once it's finished updating, you have to go back to Payroll and begin it again, Federal e-file and reporting. So it makes you start it over again. If you're not the person who filed last year and you don't have the logon, you might want to try to figure that out too. So I'm going to start a new report, and I can now go look at my list of available federal reports. And here's my 2020 W-2, W-3. Now my sample data is in 2015. So we're going to pretend that it's 2020. And I'm going to get a warning message that says, hey, it's not the right year, but we're just going to pretend. So when I click next, it gives me my list of employees. You can deselect if you want, but you don't have to. So if you have employees who are in your payroll master file that did not get any wages whatsoever in 2020, it's not, you don't have to go through and say, oh, I don't need one for them. It's not going to generate a W-2 for them. You can just include everybody. Go ahead and click next. There's always stuff to read on these screens. I'm going to click generate. It is going out to my payroll master file, my payroll module, and it's gathering data from my payroll module. So it retrieves the data from employee setups and check records and all that kind of stuff. And it puts it into a grid. Once it generates that, it actually stores it in a little mini database for Atrix, separate from your payroll file. And you can make changes to it in the Atrix grid if you need to. It does not write back to your payroll master file, however. So if you have things like COVID pays that you weren't tracking on a COVID pay, and so this is my little warning here that I'm in the wrong year. I'm just going to continue. So if you were tracking COVID a different way, I've had some clients who tracked it on a job number because they didn't set up the COVID pays, and some clients who just kept track of it in Excel. And if you have those values, you can manually enter that information. It's not going to write back to your payroll master file though. So you have choices here when you get to this point. You can, if you have hundreds of employees, you can test drive the process on 25 of your employees. You can test drive the process on all of your employees, or you can do it for reals. So I'm going to go ahead and do it for real so you can kind of see the whole thing here. And I'm just hitting the next button. If you have multiple payroll files, so if you have a data folder, like you go to File, Open Company, and you have a regular, company folder for your hourly employees, but maybe your salaried employees or your executive employees, those highly compensated employees, maybe you have to do File, Open Company to go to a different payroll folder to process payroll for those people, but both of those data folders are for the same employer ID number. You would have multiple payroll data files. So you would check the top box because you can merge those into one W-2 file so that you don't have to have two sets of W-2s because you wouldn't want that, right? Now, I don't have that set up in my system. So if you have that situation, you can let us know if you need help with that, but it allows you to save one file and then merge those files together. So I have to do it single because that's all I have. It's going to want you to fill out some company information. This is kind of the minimum required, but you might want to fill out the contact information and so forth for e-filing. I'm going to go ahead and click next. I am filing for my company, my employer. I'm not a third-party tax preparer or W-2 preparer. It wants to make sure that you have all of your state tax IDs in. So I'm missing one for my Oregon state unemployment. If I click next, it's going to say, hold on a minute, something's wrong here. We're missing something. So I've got an incorrect format, it thinks. I don't know why that is, but it's hollering at me for it. And then it accepted it after I did that. So maybe it's just not right. And then I don't have a state unemployment at all. This is looking at the in payroll setup taxes tax groups. You have on your states, you have two tax IDs you can put there. One is your state withholding, that's the top one. The second one is the state unemployment. It will default if you have those set up there. If you don't, I can enter that number here in Atrix only. It's not going to write back to my payroll master file, but I can have it here for getting my W-2s out. So, all right. Once I get past that, I have some more nosy questions. So do I have any employees who are exempt from Medicare or Social Security? I'm going to say no, because probably I don't. So this is kind of a loaded question. People who are deferring Social Security taxes under the CARES Act. I'm going to say no. What you put here is up to you. I am not allowed to advise you on what you do with regard to Medicare or Social Security taxes for W-2 reporting purposes. Do you have employees who are members of the clergy? Do you want to use control numbers? Do you have employees who elect to receive only W-2s electronically? The answer to this is typically no, because Sage doesn't really have just yet a way to have employees receive those electronically. So I'm going to click next. And I'm a 941 filer, so I have to check that box to produce the 941 file. That's usually all a construction company has to check there. You can read the screen on these. There are these little help topics, little question mark. If you don't, whoops, it came up on my other monitor here. If you're not sure, it'll walk you through the help topics on what you check there and what that does. Okay, so don't be afraid to use the help. I love little help buttons on these windows. When I click next, I have an option of truncating the W-2s, masking the W-2s, or printing W-2s, Social Security numbers, or printing the full Social Security number on the W-2. Now it's going out and it's going to bring up my grid for preparing my W-2s. And if you have multiple monitors, you could be following along with me in your software and doing a test run. I am a huge fan of test runs. Do a test run, print the PDF, thing, see what it looks like, verify the data, and then go back and do it again, because you can do that. All right, on my screen here, I have a split screen. I got a little divider here. I can scroll back and forth between the two sides of the screen. The left side of my screen, there's a little scroll bar at the bottom too, for each side. On the left side, I have columns in blue. Atrix will highlight the columns that it's going to validate. It wants to look at the data and see if it looks, reasonable, and see if everything that is required is entered. Now, these screens are, I can make the columns wider, like for my address. I can make, if I don't have a box 3, I can make that shorter and whatever. So things that you can do there. If I know, maybe I sent out a letter to all my employees and I said, hey, we're going to generate your W-2s. If you've not updated, if you've moved last year, since we did this last time, and you need to send us an address change, give us your address changes. Maybe somebody sent you an address change and you haven't been able to go into your payroll file yet and update those, but they're sitting on your desk right there. I've got an address change that somebody handed me this morning and I'm doing W-2s. Maybe Lori Becker has given me an address change. I can go in here and I can change her address. Maybe she forgot to tell me her apartment number. I can add her apartment number right here on the fly, as a convenience feature, so that you can get those W-2s out. Now, again, does not write back to your Sage master file, so you still have to go back and do that. If I click the next button at the top, it's going to go through those fields that are highlighted. It's going to look for anything that it doesn't like, and it would warn me if, I was missing usually it's like a zip code, or a zip code isn't in the wrong format or something. So I would get a warning. Now it's going to go through my box 13 check marks. So box 13 typically is if you've got an employee who is participating in a 401k or a Roth or an IRA or some kind of a retirement plan. On that employee setup, you check that box to say they're participating, and it will look to see if that box is checked, and it'll holler at you. It'll give you a warning message if you've got deductions for a retirement plan and that box isn't checked. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. All right. Or it'll holler at you if it's checked and there are no deductions too. So, or it should, it did. I don't have that set up. Now it's going to come to the other side, my right-hand side here. This is where all the numbers are. I love this feature of Atrix. Do you reconcile your payroll to your W-2s? If so, I have these handy dandy totals at the top of my screen here. I can run a test run of my W-2s, and I can tie out my federal wages, my federal tax withholdings, my Social Security wages, my Social Security withheld. I can tie that out to my 941 just by doing a test run of my W-2s, and it gives me the totals at the top, which is really handy. Now, can I go in and change this amount? I can. If I know that somebody was given a bonus check, or they had, you know, maybe you forgot to add a non-cash um, taxable benefit. So I had an employee that we paid their life insurance, and I completely forgot to put that non-taxable benefit in a check in December, and their gross wages are understated. I can go in here and I could add it on the fly in here and get their W-2 out. It's not going to update payroll, but I could add it right here if I needed to make those kinds of adjustments right in here. Now, I don't have taxes withheld for that, but I could report that increase in federal taxable wages. So that's a feature of the software. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click next. It's going to look at those amounts. Oh, I got a warning. So it's going to pop up a warning if you have something that is off. So what this is telling me is that my box 3 Social Security wages plus my box 7 Social Security tips, in case you guys get tipped for your work, times 6.2% has to be within $1 of box 4. And so I have an employee that had Social Security wages and the math didn't hold. So it's possible that um, something happened during payroll processing, and the Social Security calculations were incorrect, or were overridden on the check. So I probably remitted those taxes on behalf of the employee, and I probably don't want to modify the W-2 because then that's going to be inaccurate. So for some of the error messages, it requires you to go back and correct it. In this particular case, this is what happened in payroll in 2020. So I'm just going to go ahead and say continue without correcting, and it lets me continue then. All right, now it's going to check my box 16 and my box 17. Now, here's your box 14. I have no idea. I mean, I would have thought this would have said COVID sick, but this is what it's telling us to report here. If somebody has the answer to what the IRS wants to see on that line in box 14, please let me know, because I haven't had a chance to really research that. But it shows up as EPSLA $511. I am stunned by that, so I don't know what Sage intended there. Okay, notice that I have one guy who got paid COVID wages. If I know that somebody else did, but I was tracking it outside the system, I could come in here and I could say, okay, well, or if I know that this amount was more than that, I could, because I didn't do it quite in time, maybe this guy really got paid, $850 in COVID wages. I can enter it right here. And by the way, if you've got 600 employees and you had 100 of them that were out with COVID, first of all, I'm really, really sorry for them and for you. If you have that in Excel with the employee name and the list of COVID wages, 2 columns in Excel, you can do this thing where you can sort by the employee's last name. Okay, sort by the employee's last name, get this in the exact same, or better yet, Social Security number, sort by the Social Security number. Nope, doesn't let me sort by that, sorry. Well, I would probably export to Excel. You can export these columns to Excel, type the numbers in, and then you can copy paste an entire column of data into the Atrix grid. So there are ways to get those numbers in kind of in bulk without having to manually one by one enter them. So let us know, we can kind of help you with that. Okay, I'm going to click next, and it's going through and my little wheel is spinning. It's validating the next columns. It's coming over here to Social Security number. I don't know why. Oh, because I highlighted it. Never mind. It's because I highlighted it. All right, I'm going to go next. It's now going to the next steps in my process. I still have a continue without correcting because it went back. All right, then once you get past that, it wants to sell you some stuff. It's going to tell you, you know, how much it's going to cost you, $1.91 per employee to do everything. Might be worth it. Don't have to buy forms, don't have to buy envelopes, don't have to sit there at the conference room table and stuff them with your whole accounting team. Complete e-filing for my 51 employees is going to cost me $97.41. I think that's worth it. But optionally, you can choose to print your employee W-2s and have Atrix do the e-filing for you. They are going to charge you, you know, some fees for doing the e-filing, or if you really want to, you can print your own official copies, so that Atrix is not going to do any of it. So you're not stuck with having to pay if you don't want to pay. But I'm going to go ahead and let Atrix do everything so you can kind of see when we get to the end of this. I'm going to click next. For an extra $34.95, they'll produce a PDF archive of everything for you. I'm going to say no thank you because I can do that myself. I'm going to click next. It's going to print my Oregon state. If you have multiple states or different states, it would print. It would give you a list of what your state forms are there that it'll produce. This is a cover sheet that tells me exactly what forms are going to be produced. People have emailed me and said, wait a minute, I clicked print, it didn't do anything. Why isn't it printing my forms? It doesn't print the forms from here, it just prints this cover sheet if you actually want to store the paper and you want to put this on top of it all. So, all right, now it's going to create the forms for me. If you've already purchased forms, I'm sorry if you purchased the wrong ones. The forms that you would use if you're printing them yourself, the forms you would use are 4-up forms, blank paper, completely blank, like nothing, completely blank on the front of the paper. 4-up perforated forms with instructions on the back. That's what Sage recommends. That's what Atrix recommends, because this is exactly what it prints. I could print this to plain paper and it looks exactly like what I needed it to do. So, and I've had people do that. I'm going to go ahead and do a print final here. It's telling me put in my 4-part perforated W-2 forms, but I'm going to print to Microsoft PDF because I don't have 4-up perforated forms. And these are my employer W-2s. I can see at the top of my screen here, right up here, it tells me that these are my employer W-2s. So you can tell that I've done this before, so I'm just going to overwrite what I did before here. And it's going to go out and it's going to print my employer copies. And you can scroll through them. I have 13 pages. You can scroll through and look at them before you print them if you want to, or you can print them, you can do a test run, print it to PDF or print it to paper, look them all over, and then go back and do it again. Once you've printed your forms, you do the next step. It's going to load up the next forms for you. These are my federal W-2s right here. So these are 2-up. Okay, so these you could probably print to plain paper, right? These are my federal W-2s. I'll print my copy here. Then I'm going to go to the next step. It's going to do my W-3. So now a test run, if you've not already done this, a test run, when you get to the W-3, it's a really handy way to see how many forms you need. So I need 51 forms. Plus, I have my handy dandy totals for tying out to my 941. So a test run is a great way to be able to get that information. So note that for next year. I'm going to go ahead and print my final copy here. There's my federal W-3. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click next. It's going to do my Oregon W-2s. Okay, these are my employee copies for Oregon. And Yes, it would be nice if I could make this bigger for you, but I don't have a way to really zoom in on it. Um, Let me find my employee that had the W-2, box 14 wages, other. Who was it? I thought it was. Wasn't her. It was. It does it in employee name. Oh, there it was. Nope. Okay, I wanted to see how it showed up. See, this is what I get for not being able to test. Oh, there we go. Nope, that's not it either. There it goes, right there. So this is what it shows up like on the W-2. I advise researching what the IRS says needs to show up there, because this was Sage's instructions that I don't know why it's showing up that way, and I've not had a chance to look into that, so I apologize for that. I literally found out about it yesterday afternoon when a client did this and told me, hey, it's showing up that way, and I don't know why it showed up that way. So, okay, all right. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and print these copies. These are my Oregon W-2s. I want to get to the end here so that you can see the login information. So again, I was saying that if you are not the person who filed last year and you don't know what the Atrix login is, you have to request that to be reset, and that it's like Fort Knox. It's kind of amazing what they make you go through. All right, so when you get to forms that may require you to enter information, you're going to need to enter that information in these forms before you're going to be able to print them. So just going to try to go through this really quick. Make that go to 0. I don't know what that was. I had nothing for the third quarter. I'm going to go ahead and print a copy. It's going to make me put something in here. That's what I get for using old data. And call it that. I don't know. I've never had to work with Oregon, so I don't know what all is required. There's a phone number. And a signature. I'll just hope that I can do this, and this would be, whatever that is. Okay. I'm going to print my copy. And it allows me to do a double check on these forms that you have to fill in. So I'm going to just pretend that I did it correctly. So it lets you print a draft and then go back and print the final if you need to, so you can review it. So that's really handy. Go ahead and replace that. Go to my next step. Now, this is where it's going out to the Atrix website, and it's going to want me to log in. So if you get to this point and you go, uh-oh, I don't know what the username or password is, or if I even have a username or password, you're going to want to figure that out. So there is a handy forgot your login here. And you can put in your company's EIN, and it will send an email to Atrix, and then you start an email dialogue. They'll probably send you a form. If I remember this correctly, they send you a form you have to fill out. You got to get signatures and send it back. If you have not even enrolled yet, there's an enroll button right here to set up a login for this. And then they're going to send you a form, I believe, that you have to fill out, have signed, and send back. So you want to get this done, not the day that you're trying to file W-2s and 1099s. So you're going to want to get that done ahead of time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel because I don't have a login and I was doing it for real. So, and then it's going to want to know why, and you could say we were testing the process. Okay. And I can say, yes, I want to try again later, and it will take me back into, so if I was doing it for real and I want to try again later, it actually saved my file for me. So when I go back in, it should have saved my file for me. Waiting for that to come back up. Now I have a saved report. That saved report, if I have multiple IDs, is right here. So this is the one that I produced today. I can go in and edit it, and it's going to open that file back up, and then I can continue. So you cannot save a test run. So just be aware of that. So this was a suspended file. Do I want to complete the e-filing now? I'm going to say no, but if I were to say yes, it would take you back to whatever point you kind of left off at when you saved it. So there is a save feature when you go in, if you exit out and you're doing it for real, I mean, you're doing a live generate, it does allow you to go in and save it at the point that you left off. So don't be afraid to save the file and go back in. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and leave that there. And we're just doing testing the process. Okay. So now I'm going to unmute and see if anyone has questions on that or needs me to go back over anything. So if you're muted and you want to ask a question, let me know. I have one raised hand. So Araceli, do you have a question?
No,
Okay.
I am good. I'm sorry. I'm just testing.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. No problem at all. Okay. Anybody with questions at all on that process? Okay. All right. I'm going to move along then into our next slide for closing accounts payable. Closing accounts payable, you're going to want to run your 1099 preparation report first. And I'm going to show you a couple of tricks that I use there because I run it 2 times. I run it first for all of my vendors who are marked to receive 1099s. And then I run it the second time for my vendors who are not marked to receive 1099s because maybe I forgot to mark somebody and I need to go back and mark them. So you're going to do that first so that you have all of your vendors set up correctly. If that checkbox is not marked on the vendor setup, a 1099 will not be generated for that vendor. So that's important. Again, you're going to back up your files before you run the close year task. And typically, you're just going to run the close 1099 year task. If it is also your fiscal year, like your fiscal year ends in December, you can also optionally run the close year task. I'll show you where you're going to see where those years are. Then you're going to go into set up vendors and you're going to make sure that all of your, after you run your 1099 preparation report, you're going to go in and make sure that everything is correct. You can do a test run of your 1099s. I love test runs. And then you can print them or have Atrix prepare them for you after you're done with that. Okay, let's get out of that. We're saving general ledger for last. All right, in accounts payable, in AP settings, there are 2 years. Now, both of my years are 12/31/20 because my fiscal year ends in December and my 1099 is in 12/31/20. If your year ending date is 12/31/19, let's talk about that. Or if it's even before that. Totals are stored on the vendor for this year, last year, and next year. And that's what the title of those fields are, this year, last year, and next year. And I have vendor totals for how much did they invoice us, how much did we pay them, and those kinds of things that are stored in the vendor. And then I also have that for my 1099 amounts. What were 1099 amounts for this year, last year, and next year? If this year in your AP settings is 2019, then the next year accumulator is for 2020. If you have already started processing invoices in 2021, your next year accumulator combined 2020 and 2021 in the next year. So you have some fixes you have to put into place. If your year ending date is 2020, you're totally fine, because if you've not yet closed the year, it's storing your 2021 activity in that next year accumulator. So hopefully that makes sense. You just want to be careful about maybe not having closed the year. If it's still in 2019, if that 1099 year is still 2019 and you have not yet closed the year, okay, 1099 year, and you've already started processing AP invoices in 2021, you're going to have to do a recalculation on your 1099 totals. Now, that's not the end of the world because it's not difficult. So you can go ahead and close the year, roll it to 2021, and then there's a tool, and I would read the help topic on this or the knowledge base article on it. I'm sorry, it's not a tool, it is a task. Recalculate 1099 totals. Now you want to know what you're doing before you do this, and you want to back up your AP master file before you do it, so that in case it doesn't work the way you expect it to, you can always restore that backup. All right, the report I'm talking about is in miscellaneous reports, accounts payable miscellaneous 1099 preparation. This report by default. Now, some of you may have multiple fiscal entities in one data folder. If you do, you want to run this by fiscal entity because it produces one page per entity. So that would be multiple GL prefixes with different employer identification numbers, different EINs on a GL prefix. Now my data actually does have that set up. So I'm going to run this for the current year, my current year. See, I can do it for last year or I can do it for current year. So if you've already closed the year and your 1099 year ending date is 2021, I can run it for 2020 by just rolling back to last year. I can't do it for next year though. Okay, so it's just current year. So my current year is 2020. Minimum reporting amount, I think, is still $600. Somebody let me know if it's changed since 8 years ago, since I last had to do this for real. If you inactivated vendors during the year, you can mark include inactive vendors as well. And then this is a new form that was installed, I love it, with version 20.3. You used to have to change the conditions manually, and Sage did us a favor. I just love this. So I can run it the first time for the vendors that are marked to receive Form 1099. And in this, I can see brand new form. I love it when they give us brand new forms. I can see my vendors. I can see the 2020 amount. I can see if the vendor's marked as inactive and they are marked to receive a Form 1099. So this is a brand new form that came with version 20.3. If you have the old form, you have to modify it using conditions to say, it defaults to marked as to receive 1099, so you'd have to modify the conditions. So that would be in here. So there is receives Form 1099. I can change that to say it's not marked and run it for those that are not marked. So you would do that with the old form. Okay, so I won't do that here though. All right, so then I can run it that way, or I can run it for the vendors that are not marked to receive a 1099, which I have nothing to print there. Okay. I would do it both ways, just to make sure that you don't have vendors that have amounts that maybe need to be marked. All right, something I want to point out here. On my very first vendor here, this guy, DBA Joe's Electric, and it's A1 Electric Company. If you've been on the system a really long time, you may have this set up to be a little different. I want to kind of show you that to talk about what Atrix does and what the system does with regard to DBAs. And I have a question about how to do a backup. Yes, at the end of this, I will show people how to use file tools to do a backup. When you set up a vendor, if the vendor is a doing business as. Typically, you are cutting the check to the DBA name. So it's Joe's Electric, okay, is who I'm sending the check to. But the IRS knows this person as A1 Electric Company. That's the name that's on, that's the W-9 name, right? And there's the tax recipient ID number. So when you enter it this way, the system automatically will take when it prints the W-2, it will print the W-2 to A1 Electric Company, DBA Joe's Electric. You don't have to enter the DBA anywhere. Now, I know that some of my clients who've been on the system a really long time ago before Sage introduced this, is they actually put it somewhere in the naming convention or the address. You don't have to do that. So you can have it just be the DBA name is the name of the vendor, the tax reporting name or the tax ID name is in the tax recipient ID name there. Now, 20.3 did this for you. I no longer have my 1099 miscellaneous as the default. It is now 1099 NEC, non-employee comp. If you try to print your 1099 miscellaneous forms before you've installed 20.3, you will not be able to do it. We do have kind of a workaround. One of our consultants is this guru geek who's come up with a process to be able to do it, but it's going to cost you to have him put that in place for you, and I have no idea how involved that is. I just know that he says he's done it. So if you had vendors that were previously marked as 1099 miscellaneous, they are automatically marked as 1099 NEC. So you don't have to go back and modify any of those. However, if you do need to change it to rents gross proceeds, you'll have to go back and modify those. So just to be aware of that. Okay. All right, so you make sure all your vendors are set up correctly. Once you know you've got your vendors set up correctly and that your 1099 amounts are correct, excuse me, you're going to go to accounts payable and it's in tasks and it is government e-file and reporting. If you are one of our Midwest clients that up there near the Canadian border and you deal with vendors who are Canadian vendors, that is the form 105018. That is a very similar process. It's just a different form. So I'm going to do form 1099 for my USA vendors. And I'm going to create a new report here. And I'm going to pay by fiscal entity because that's how my system is set up. I can do it one entity at a time. I happen to have two of them. And it's going to be for Form 10 NEC. Notice you wouldn't have that form available if you've not installed version 20.3. My reporting year can be 2020 or 2019. This is determined by that 1099 year date in my AP settings. My minimum reporting amount is $600. It retrieved my federal ID from my GL prefix. If there was no federal ID here, you could enter it manually. However, we're hoping that your system already has that set up there. I'm going to go ahead and click next. And oh, I guess I did that incorrectly. Let me do it by vendor because I know that that actually works. And my federal ID is going to be something like that. All right. And I only had 3 vendors, so I must have paid them on a different prefix. I created a little bit of sample data for 2020 because I was in 2015. If only we could go back to 2015 and prevent COVID, huh? I hope everybody in your organizations have been able to stay healthy. All right, it should be bringing that file up. Where'd it go? Okay. It's being slow, or I didn't click the right button. Let me try that again. New report, to vendor, 2020. I clicked next, I clicked next, I clicked generate. And I am missing something here. Sorry, I'm looking to see if it, well, it worked last time we did this presentation. Where's my file? Okay, I'm so sorry. Technical difficulties. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on here. Let me try my other company here. Well, let me go back and look at my vendor setup. Sorry. I have 1099 amount paid this year. I have NEC. Let me do something here. If you have, no, see, it should have brought that up. I'm sorry, I'm going to see if I've got something inadvertently running over here that's blocking it for me. Nope. Oh, I've got a process that is stuck. Hold on, give me 1 second here. Yeah, wasn't responding. Okay, don't know why that happened. Sorry about that. Real world problems, this happens. Got to call the IT guy. All right, let's try that again. Make sure I don't have anything hanging up there. Let me make sure I don't have a saved report out there. Maybe that's part of my problem, is that I saved the report last time. Oh, I probably did and then didn't save the process. So let me start that over again. See, you'll get to see how all these funny quirks work. And by the way, I don't know if you saw that come along, but Atrix actually, yep, that's my problem. Let me remove this file, start it over again. Oh, cannot be removed. Why not? It's a draft. Okay, let me go in and edit here. I'm so sorry. No, I want a new report. I got us hung up here because I was doing it. I did it with 1099s in my last presentation, and it wants me to file it. So let's go back, because you can kind of see the process. It's exactly the same process for 1099s as it is for W-2s. Now you don't have a box 14 obviously, but it's going to go through and put your employer information here. So like your company information, for instance, and see how it did this automatically for me with my recipient name is A1 Electric, and then it automatically put in the optional name of DBA Joe's Electric, because that's how I had that vendor set up. I can go in, I can modify these things if I know that they're true. I believe I can resort. Nope, guess I can't. It's giving me all that information and validating the information for me. If I have to mark whether or not they've received second notices, I don't know anybody that actually tracks second notices, but if you have to for a vendor, you can mark those on the fly if you forgot to do that. When I go next, it's going to go over and come over to my check boxes. So if it's a federal ID, let's say I had an employee and it should be a social security number and I forgot to change that box or something, If this guy, let's say it's a social security number, if I check that box, notice how it changed that number to a social security number, so you can kind of change the format on the fly. Again, that does not go back and update it on the vendor. You would have to go back and change that on the vendor. So I'm going to click next. It's going to take me through, all my fields that it's looking for the information and validating the data for me. I'm going to click next there. And then it's coming over and giving me my total. So I have the handy total at the top of the screen there so that I can know what my total 1099 amounts are. If I forgot to add something in here and I know this amount needs to be something different, I can change it right there if I need to. Another thing I can do, by the way, if I need to, is I can insert a row or multiple rows and add somebody on the fly for a 1099. Now, that's a handy feature, and most people don't know that it's there. And so I can also remove rows if I needed to. Like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to deselect them. That's not really true. I can delete a row by right-clicking on the row number on the side and insert or delete rows from here. So that's a handy feature that they've included there. And a lot of people don't know that's there. So again, you don't have to go through, if you've got 3,500 vendors, you don't have to go through and deselect the ones from that grid. It's going to be controlled by the checkbox on whether or not the vendor receives a 1099. So running your prep report, that 1099 preparation report, cleaning up your vendors first, I would really recommend doing that so you don't have to worry about getting into Atrix and then having to try to figure out things from there. So okay, so we go next. Okay, and it's validating the state. Should be popping up here, my next thing. Come on. Didn't click hard enough. Lots of little help topics. There's my my sales pitch. I've got 4 vendors. It's going to cost me $24.99. Again, I can optionally print my own and have them e-file. They'll charge you $24.95 regardless of, no, I guess it is. I guess it is. So you can optionally, have them e-file the 1099s or for the Fed or the state. You deselect those as you like, or just print them all yourself, your official copies. So I'm going to go ahead and if you have them do everything, by the way, you saw that I can print the forms and store them. So I'll just go ahead and do that. And I don't want a PDF. It's going to print my Oregon forms, very similar to what we saw in payroll. I'm going to go ahead and click next. All right, so again, 4 up, blank on the front, instructions on the back. Could I print it to plain paper if I wanted? Sure. I'm going to print my copy. I'm going to print it to a PDF. It's going to be my Oregon 1099 miscellaneous. Well, now, actually, this is now Oregon 1099 NEC because I didn't have the year-end update when I did this. That's what that form looks like. I haven't delved into it to see how different it is, except for the name of the form at the bottom. I'm going to go next. By the way, if you print to PDF, you can always open your PDF file and print your PDF to your forms. They line up pretty well. There's my 1096 form that if you do a print preview or a test run first, your 1096 will show you how many forms you need. I only needed 4 here. I was lucky. So that'll show you the number of forms you need if you're actually going to use real forms. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, for both W-2s and 1099s, where the federal government has required the red forms, remember our red forms, you do not need the red forms if you're printing from Atrix. So there is some coding, apparently, on these forms that you can print them in black and white and submit them to your to the Fed, and they will accept them coming from Atrix. So you do not need the official red forms. I get that question at least once a year, 2 or 3 times actually a year, where people say, hey, I'm trying to print to my red forms and it's printing all these black boxes on it. Yeah, you don't need to do that. So you can print actually to plain paper, and Atrix will accept the form. So I'm going to go ahead and print this copy, and that's my 1096. Something like that. And then go to the next step. There is an Atrix knowledge base, by the way, that you can go out to their website and ask these questions and find the answers to all these questions. So it's really handy. Here's my federal copies of the NEC. Save those. Go to the next step. I guess this is my federal 1096. Maybe my other one was for Oregon. One was my copy, one was their copy. I'm not paying too much attention here, sorry. It tells you which the copies are. You just have to look a little closer than I did. And then go to the next step. And there's my payer copies. And of course you can scroll through these. I only have one page, but if you had multiple pages, you could scroll through them on your screen, double check everything. I like printing the PDF and reviewing the PDF files, so. Okay, can't type, obviously. And then it's going to take me out and want to connect me to Atrix. So because I was doing this as a live run, and so it's looking for my login here. So very, very similar process, just different fields that are being retrieved into that Atrix grid. Now, one question I get is, what if I have to do corrected? Now, I haven't actually filed. I'm going to say no here, and I'm going to do a file save. Notice how I can come up here and I can do a file save. It's saving my data for these, and I can do an exit then. And now I have this draft out here that I can go back in and edit, and I could choose not to have Atrix do everything, and I could do it myself. And then if I needed to print a corrected 1099, so I'll show you that since we have a little bit of time here, because we went a lot faster. I didn't have as many questions as I had last year. By the way, when you do a corrected W-2, it does not reprint the W-2 with the corrected amounts. It prints a form that's a corrected W-2 form. And that can be a little confusing when you first see it and it's not what you expect. All right, so I'm going to go into my other options here and print this way. And then they still want it. They're like, are you sure you really want to do it all yourself? Yes, I'm sure. Okay. I won't save all of these. I just want to be able to get it to the end so I can show you how to do a no. I do need to print final in order to be able to probably save it again. Just all right, there's the instructions when you print final. So you literally could print plain paper and then print the instructions and send the instructions with the form. Okay, this is what you'll see if you open a saved file and you need to reprint or correct a completed form. So it works very similarly with 1099s and with W-2s. So when you reopen that file, this is what pops up. And so if I want to e-file or print incomplete forms, because I have some that are incomplete, I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And hold on, let me go see what I didn't print. So I didn't print the federal 1097. So let me go ahead and print that one. Actually, you know what? Let's do recipient 1099s. Let's do a correct a completed 1099. And handily, there is a 1099 password lookup if you had, but we don't have that yet for Sage 300 construction and real estate. I am not sure how that works with Atrix. Atrix does provide a way apparently for employees to get things digitally, but usually you're just having them mail them to them. So I have never used that process, so I can't speak to it, but you can look it up in their help topics. So, but we're going to do a completed 1099 and we're going to do a correction. So I'm going to do the recipient 1099. It brings me back to this screen and let's say, okay, well, I forgot this guy, I also gave him a bonus that I'm going to put on his 1099 and we're going to make this 2250. Okay. And then I'm going to click next. And I'm not going to do anything with anybody else. That's the only one that I changed. And no, I don't want to do that. It's going to want to print out, a correction for all of my government forms as well, because now those amounts are different. I'm going to go ahead and hit the next step. It's going to force me to print final since I had printed final before. And then I now have a corrected, notice up here, I now have a corrected, it's marked as a corrected 1099 and it's only one page because it's only for the vendor that I corrected. Okay. So that's how you would do a correction to one of those forms. And then it's going to take me out of here. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. And I'm going to say cancel yes, because I want to be able to get to our next slide and go through everything. So say yes, that's okay. And back myself out of there. Okay. All right, so that is, okay, yes, thank you. And notice I've got a new saved record out here because that's my corrected 1099. So it's storing everything that I'm doing there. All right, get me back out of here. Okay, perfect. The last module typically that you're going to close is general ledger. So, you're probably still doing some adjustments for 12/31/2020 if that was the end of your fiscal year. If it's not the end of your fiscal year and your fiscal year ends like in July, you would wait and do these things, then. But whatever the end of your fiscal year is, you're going to post and record all the general ledger entries that you typically do for your, month end or year end. And absolutely review your posting journals to make sure nothing rejects. I also recommend going into general ledger and looking to see what are the unposted entries and resolving them and clearing out your new general ledger transaction file. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Also, make sure your suspense account has no entries. If you had a setup issue or if somebody posted something to the system's suspense account, you need to clear that. A suspense account does not close to retained earnings. It's a non-closing account. And so if you close your year and you had something sitting in suspense, your general ledger will be out of balance. Now it can be fixed. There's nothing that can't be fixed, so don't panic about that. But those are two things you want to do ahead of time. You can print your financial statements at any point, either before you close the year or after you close the year. And then always back up your general ledger master file. And then you'll run that close year task. Now, what happens with that close year task is it goes through every general ledger account you have, and those accounts, stored on those accounts, are year-to-date totals and for 10 years, okay, 10 years of balances if you've been on the system that long, plus 2 years of activity records. It wipes those out and rolls them, well, it rolls all those numbers and it rebuilds the retained earnings account last, because it has to rebuild all those general ledger accounts, the closing accounts, the income statement accounts, and then it does retained earnings last. So if that process gets interrupted, you could have your retained earnings account be incorrect. And so you definitely want that general ledger master backup. And I'll show you how to create that, because I've had it happen with one client and we had to go rebuild their retained earnings account and it wasn't fun. So make sure that you do that. After you've closed the year, you do not have to wait to July. I know how this works. I was a controller once upon a time ago. I know how this works. You throw all your December activity in, you send your financial statements to your outside CPA, and it takes them 6 months to get you your adjusting journal entries. You do not have to wait until June to close GL. You can close GL today, and you can continue to record entries in December. That allows you to be able to print your January financial statements. But you would not be able to print January financial statements or any other statement in the new year until you actually close GL. You can always record prior year adjustments. You can do it in GL. I can still enter billing adjustments in billing. In billing. I could still enter stuff in cash management if I needed to for the prior year. It doesn't stop you from doing that. I can reclose the fiscal year 52 times if I need to. So you cannot inadvertently close. I mean, if you've already closed the fiscal year and it's now 2021 for you in GL, you can't accidentally close 2021. It's impossible. It would only close to 2022 if you were in December, if general ledger is in December of 2021. So don't be afraid you're going to inadvertently close the new year. You can't do it. It's not possible. Okay. Common general ledger close issues. You maybe had prior year adjustments that posted to 2019. And you get this pop-up that says year end is not, you're not at year end and you have prior year adjustments. Holy cow, what does that mean? It means somebody posted something to 2019 and that has to be closed before you can now close 2020. So you may see that. If the display says 0, go ahead and run it. If the display doesn't say 0, you might want to stop. So you might want to go and investigate what was it that posted to 2019 that maybe shouldn't have, and do I have to resolve that first so that I don't mess up my 2019 year-end balances. Okay, also before you close general ledger, you want to run your income statement and look at what your net income or loss is. Hopefully there's no loss, but you want to look at that net income line, because that whatever is on that net income line should be the exact same amount that you see when you close the year that will update to retained earnings. If it's not the same, you have an issue with your income statement probably, but you may also have something in suspense. So you want to be sure that those numbers agree. If they don't, you want to stop and you want to go back and figure out why they don't. Okay. All right. So let's go in and take a look at a few things. I want to show you some tricks. The first thing that I love to show people is this inquiry in general ledger. My favorite thing in the entire world. Always pick current transactions when you're doing this. Current transactions are, oh, I messed up my default because I was playing around. Okay. This is for whatever period your GL is in. This is essentially your trial balance for every account that you have in your system. Now I have multiple companies. I have a company 10 and a company 21 and a company 40, and I don't know how many companies are in here, but it shows my current period activity, my current balance, future activity, and future balance. I don't really care about current period activity. I don't really care about future activity. I don't really care about future balance. If my general ledger for all of my companies is in December, this is my trial balance. I can come up here, I can say, don't include anything where my current balance, I want current balance is not equal to blank. That way I don't have to see accounts that don't have any balances. I can export this to Excel. Okay. Oh, look, this is new. I love this feature. Every time you export an Excel, export something to Excel from an inquiry, it keeps a copy of it in your data folder, or at least it did. It no longer does that. It prompts you to store it somewhere else because those accumulate over time. And if you've got 7,500 XLS files in your data folder, that's junk that you don't need in that data folder. It makes backups really slow. Now it's defaulting to my data folder. I don't probably want to store it here. I probably want to throw it someplace on my own personal desktop or someplace else on my next, on my network, and give it a different name here. Okay, so this is my, 12/31/2020 trial balance. And maybe I don't want to store, well, it's the old version of Excel, which is really annoying. That's what the interface uses. But then I can, when it opens it, I can now resave it as the new version of Excel, right? But now I have this handy trial balance. I used to do this for my auditor. Here's my year-end balance at 12/31. You might want to change the title. Here's my subledger total. And do I have a variance? So I'm going to run once I get my bank accounts reconciled, I'm going to come in and put in whatever it showed for my ending balance on my bank account, and I'm going to see if I'm off from GL. I'm going to reconcile accounts receivable. I'm going to reconcile accounts payable, and I can create a handy dandy reconciliation worksheet right from that. So I love that feature. Also, using that same account, now I don't know if I have anything in here, I can look to see by adding a column, I can add a field for prior year adjustments to see if I have any prior year adjustments that have not been closed to retained earnings. You might want to look at that before you actually close GL. And again, I can add a filter, delete that one, add a filter that says prior year adjustment is not equal to 0. And I have prior year adjustments in my company 21. So let's go look at that. If I go to close general ledger for the year, let me go see what my period is. So for company 21, I'm still in May of 2015, but I have 2014 adjustments. If I go to close fiscal year, for that company, the first question I get is, have you backed up the master file and the transaction files? I'm going to lie. I'm going to tell you, never lie to this question. But just for right now, I'm going to lie because I actually do have a backup, so it's sample data. So I'm going to pick my company 21, where I know I have those prior year adjustments. And this is the pop-up you will get. Prefix is not at year end. No, it's not. So I can't inadvertently close my 2015 fiscal year because it's not at year end. So that's nice. But it says prior year adjustments will be closed. This is not, now I've already closed 2014 long ago. 2014 was over a long time ago. So I had already posted an amount to retained earnings. This is the net of the changes I made to income statement accounts. It is not the total amount from my income statement. Okay, so if you run your income statement for 2014 or whatever, 2019, and you expect to see prior year adjustments totaling the whole net income adjustment, you're not going to see that. You're only going to see the amount that's the net of the changes. So I can accept this, and it will automatically update my retained earnings to include the prior year adjustments that I made. I can do this as many times as I need to. If I need to go back and do more prior year adjustments after my CPA sends me the next set of adjustments, I can do that. So I'm not going to go ahead and do that because I need that for demonstration purposes. But that's what you would do to close those prior year adjustments. Okay. Open close posting period is merely that. If I have rolled my year already, oh look, I'm going to close that one up. The check boxes marked mean I cannot post entries to those periods. If you've closed your year and this says 12/31, maybe the first one is January 31st, 2021, December is marked as closed, I might want to leave that marked as closed so I don't have people inadvertently trying to post things. They'll get a warning. But when I have to go do my adjustments, I might want to come back and uncheck it so I can do my adjustments and go back and check it again after I've closed the year, reclose the year. So different things that you may want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and click OK there. But you might also want to make sure that those prior periods are closed so you don't have people inadvertently, doing, the biggest culprit, I'm going to say, I'll say this gently, if any of you are AP users, it's the AP users that inadvertently change invoices and forget to change the accounting date for invoices that were entered in prior periods. So that's usually the culprit we see in trying to make those adjustments. And then number 2 on that list is AR adjustments. I'm trying to adjust an invoice in AR and I forget to use a current period, or an appropriate period accounting date on that. And it picks up the original accounting date, which was, February of 2018 or something, it kind of makes a mess. Okay. Also, big advocate for inquiries or reports, either way. If I go look at entries by batch, if I've posted everything in General Ledger and I look in my new transaction file, new is unposted entries, current is posted, and history is, holy cow, my reports run really slow. I might want to move some stuff to history. Okay, if I look in my new transaction file, I have got 2 batches that are unposted. And one of those is one that I did today for a payroll check that I was demonstrating. Okay. The other one is an AP batch that I did as an example, but they're not posted. And the reason they're not posted is because my accounting date may be, this one's way future accounting date. This one is because my general ledger is set to post manually, which in sample data, which I don't recommend. I like everything to be automatic in a real system, but I could post those. This one isn't going to post because I have a way future accounting date, right? Well, what if I have way future accounting dates and those things need to post? We need to figure out where it was entered and how do we fix it. Now, one of the things you'll see in your systems, if you've got unposted entries and they won't post because of those future dates, I like to use the report that is entries by account. Pick your new transaction file only and just do a print preview. If all of the entries by account net to 0, so like if I had my cash account, I have an entry going in and an entry coming out, and the net is 0 of those transactions because it got fixed properly in the proper period, I'm not so worried about those entries. It's the entries that don't net to 0 that we have to get those corrected so they can be posted, or we can move the transactions out of the system. So there's some cleanup to do. We like to see your general ledger transactions all posted, and we don't want any prior period entries hanging out there, so you want to get those fixed and you want to get those entries moved so you have a real clean general ledger going into the new year. The other thing that I forgot to show you on this is just as a quick, I call it the temperature test. Do you have a temperature? If you pick that inquiry, that account inquiry, and you pick your current transactions, get me back to accrual here. If I just do a real quick print preview, I'm going to take this out here real quick, delete that column, delete this column, just so we have only one column we have to look at. If I do a quick print preview on this, and I go all the way to the bottom of the report. Now, if yours is, dozens of pages long, you can hit your end button twice and it goes all the way to the bottom. Notice I have a number here at the bottom. That's my proof line. That 772.04, that's my proof line. That tells me my general ledger is out of balance by that amount. It's out of balance because I have $772.04 in prior year adjustments that have not been closed to retained earnings. That tells me I have an issue. So that's a real quick way to see if there's something that you need to fix in your system. Now, the other thing to do too is all of your accounts have an account type. If you filter for the account type of suspense, that is a system suspense account. You want to make sure that any account that has an account type of suspense has a 0 balance, because again, that will not close to retained earnings. So I like using this inquiry because I can do a lot of different things to check things without having to run my financial statements and looking through paper. All right. So that is general ledger. Okay. I don't have any questions in the chat, so I'm assuming there are no questions. So I'm going to move on through closing other modules, and then and I will do a demonstration of using file tools to back up data at the end, and then I will open up for questions as well. Okay, closing other modules. The other modules that have a close year task. Cash management, if you have the property management module, property management users, you can post interest transactions to cash management. And so cash management stores this year, last year, next year totals for interest. So that will roll those accumulators. It'll put next year into this year and this year into last year accumulator. So that's used for rolling the interest totals. If you are not a property management user, I've got clients who've never ever in the history of the use of their software ever closed the year in cash management. So just up to you. Because it doesn't matter, there's no totals to roll there. Accounts receivable also has a close year task because it stores this year and last year totals for your customers. So if you go into set up customer, there's a totals button at the bottom of the customer, and you can see the totals that are stored. It's things like how much have we invoiced, how much have they paid us, those kinds of things. And so you'll get a warning if your year is still in 2019 and you're trying to enter invoices for 2021, it doesn't have a next year accumulator. So there's no place to put 2021 transactions. So you have to close the year in order to be able to have a next year or to have it posted this year. Wait, I got that wrong. There's no prior year. I have to go look. Can't remember. Isn't that terrible? So, it's, again, back up your accounts receivable master file. We'll go look at that in just a second. And then for all the other modules, it's just business as usual. There's no close year for job costs. There's no close year for accounts payable. closed payable doesn't even have a closed month, but contracts, property management, and job cost, when you close the month in those modules, it knows to update the year-to-date totals appropriately. So it's just a typical closed month in those modules. All right, let's look at just an AR, just so I can kind of show you that in case you're getting that pop up for the customer. And these closed processes go pretty quickly. So you do have to get all the users out, tell them get out of AR, get out of anything that interfaces with AR, usually billing and that much. There's this little totals button down here. It stores balances for year to date and next year. So year to date and next year. So if my AR settings says the year is 2019, it's been storing all my 2020 stuff in next year, and it doesn't know where to put the 2021 totals when I post. So you have to roll the year in order to do that. I do like, before you just automatically do it, I tell people go and look, go into your settings and look to see what the year is. Now you have to be an application administrator, but my year end date is 20/31/2015. I could post invoices for 2016, but not 2017. So I would do this. Let me just show you. I'm going to go common tasks, tools. Okay, this is again an administrative feature, and it's file tools. So file tools, and it's in those instructions that I sent you. It does require, in some cases, an admin login if you need to, but it gives me a selection here of backup, restore, copy, move, delete, rename. Never, ever, 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 ever. How many times can I say ever use delete? Delete is gone forever. I hate it that it's even there. So no delete. Renaming is, oh my gosh, use that with caution and only if you know what you're doing. Copying might be used to do things to create a backup folder or a test folder, but again, and then moving, not so sure about that. That's usually for data folder cleanup, but you can make stuff go away and break your system. But backup is the one it defaults to. So when I click next, I can back up the entire data folder and I don't even have to go look for it. I can click OK and it picks whatever data folder I'm in for me. So I don't have to go search for my data folder. If I'm in that data folder, it picks the whole folder for me. Now, all your users have to be out of the folder. You can't have anybody working in that company at all to back up the whole folder, or it'll tell me there are files in use and it won't back them up. So if you're doing just the GL module, let's just pretend you're doing the GL module. I'm going to remove this and I'm just going to add a single file. So this is showing me the contents of my construction sample data, my Timberline Construction Company data folder. And I got a bunch of junk in here that's not even data. But if you sort by type, the type column, it sorts by alphabetically by the type of file. And so I can see if you're looking at these types here, notice that it starts with kind of like the identifier for the module. So here's APM, APT, APZ. Those are my accounts payable files. Then I've got AR, ARM, ARS, ART. Those are my AR files. If I scroll down, and look for GL, here's a GLM file. It's my general ledger master file. That's the file that gets updated when you close the year, and that's the prompt you get. Do you have a backup of your general ledger master file? Now, if you really want to do everything, you can hold your control key, and I'm going to pick my current general ledger and I would recommend doing this because it actually is going to post entries to your history file. So current general ledger master file, your current general ledger transaction file, and your history general ledger transaction file. Now you could go ahead and pick the new file if you had unposted entries and you want to do a backup of that too. But those are every GL file that I need to back up and preserve my general ledger. Oh, by the way, if I have a backup of just these files, I could restore those files to a folder called GL 2020 or 2019, I would call it. Let me just explain that. If I back these files up right before I close the year for 2020, I can restore that to another folder, call it GL Archive 2019, and I could use that information to run financial statements for 2019. Because once I close the year, I can run financial statements for every period in my current fiscal year, so every period in 2021, and every period in my immediate prior fiscal year, 2020, but I can no longer run financial statements for 2019, right? This preserves the ability to run financial statements for that 2019 fiscal year. So just make a note of that. It's going to pick all of my files here, and then I'm going to click next. It wants to know, where do you want to put it? I tell people, keep it simple. Throw it in a folder on your desktop called Sage Backups. Okay, just put it somewhere. Don't put it in your data folder, please, because it messes up things when we try to back up your data folder. Put it someplace else. You can put it on your network somewhere in a backup, but don't put it in your data folder, please. Call it something like, GL files. You can get as creative. I do B4, like in Bingo, before, close year 2020, something like that. You can also click the append button, do a date and time stamp. It puts a little funny characters on there. You hit next. It's going to validate the files. It's going to make sure they're not in use. I go next. It picks up the control file for the company. Yes, you want it to do that. I'm going to go next, next. And this is the magic screen. It completed successfully. I don't have to print this. All it's going to do is going to tell me what I backed up. You could if you wanted. I'm just going to click finish. And I now have a zipped up backup of that. Now I can go into GL and I could close the fiscal year. And you can do that for whatever module you're closing at the moment. AP, well, not AP, but AR, job cost, whatever. Back up just those files for that module. Okay, 10 minutes we've got here. Let me get through the last of this and I'll open for questions. All right. The only version supported at year end, I think we've already figured out, is 20.3. So you do want to install 20.3. If you are already on any 18 version, like 18.1, 18.2, 18.3, 18.4, you can upgrade directly to 20.3. If you're on a prior version, you have to upgrade first. Well, let's just put it this way. If you're on version 16 or 17, you can upgrade to version 18, and then from version 18 to version 20. If you're on a version prior to 2016, I'm sorry, but there's a little bit longer upgrade process, because now you have to do a multi-step, even more of a multi-step upgrade. If you use the estimating product, if you're on SQL, the SQL version of estimating, you do not need to upgrade estimating. If you are still on a pervasive version of estimating, please contact your Sage business partner, your ETHOSystems consultant, or whoever your business partner is, to talk about upgrading, because you will need to upgrade your estimating product to the SQL version. If you're on an older version, you may need to upgrade Crystal Reports. There's a process for that. It's best to have an upgrade plan if you need one, to discuss that with your consultant. And then also you want to review your server requirements for the version. So you can download the version 20 system requirements from the knowledge base, or if you want to shoot me an email, I can send you those system requirements to forward to your IT people. But you want to make sure that your server meets the minimum requirements. I've encountered a couple of clients recently who wanted to upgrade, and they were still operating on operating systems on their server that were no longer supported, not enough RAM, not enough memory installed on their server, and not enough room on their server, so storage space. So please do check those system requirements. We don't want you to run into issues when you're trying to upgrade. Okay, where to get help? Hugely important. You can call us at our help number. You can email us also. We have an email address. I didn't put that in there. You can go to our website and click the support button, and it will email us. Our support email address, if you want to request assistance, is support@ ethossystems.com. So it's the same thing. It's just support at ETHOSystems.com. That will shoot an email to our support team. They will get a consultant hooked up with you. Please try to put as much information. Just don't email them and say, "Hey, I need help." Tell them exactly, if you can, the detail and the kind of help that you need, so that they know, how much time may be involved with the help, and what consultant has the most availability, because we are absolutely slammed this time of year. I mean, it's typical 14 to 16-hour days for us while we're trying to help clients close out their year and get their upgrades done and so forth. The year-end procedures guide, I gave you a link to download that. It is the step-by-step instructions from Sage on how to do everything for year-end. Um, go to the knowledge base. You can get to the knowledge base from your Sage software. You can also use Sage City. If you are not subscribed to the Sage City um, news announcements and updates forum, I really, really, really recommend that, because you will get emails from Sage City when the updates are available, and issues that are known with the updates, release notes for the updates. They'll tell you when your payroll tax downloads come and so forth. So Sage City is the one-stop shop for everything. And if you need instructions on how to subscribe, I have those too. So I can send those to you. I want to show you, after I thank you for attending, I am going to show you in the software where to go for help. So if you don't have this, or if you don't use Sage Desktop, you can get to it from the module and the help from the module also. But you have the knowledge base at your fingertips right here. This is the knowledge base. So if I want to know how to close payroll, I can type a word search in here. I can click close payroll, and it gives me a ton of knowledge base articles. I closed the payroll year too early. What do? I can bring up that knowledge base article. I can print it. I can review it. It gives me step-by-step instructions. That is your knowledge base. Sage City is also right out here. There is a year-end center. Now it's prompting me to log in. It wants you to log in and have a login. But I can go to the Sage Year-End Center for Sage 300 Construction and Real Estate. You want to be sure that that's what you're looking at. And there is a ton of help available: videos, knowledge-based articles, checklists. Here's a timeline for doing things. You want to get your US ones if you're US, but checklists on closing payroll. What do I do and what order do I do it in? All right there in Sage City at your fingertips, right from your Sage desktop. If you need to chat with a Sage analyst, this comes with your Sage support plan. I can do a live chat right here from Sage Desktop and chat with an analyst. You're gonna put your name, your subject. It's gonna want your account number. I would put it in there just so they know who you are, because they'll ask for it. And you can do a chat session with them. It's many times faster than calling them on the phone. If you call them on the phone right now for help, you may wait 4 hours. And they do have a callback option where you can leave your number, your name and number, and they'll call you back. But if you don't answer that call when they call, they don't try again. So you have to be, available when they call back. So this is in many cases a much quicker way. Also, there's an online community. That's the TUG group, or Sage Online Community. The users group is the TUG group. What used to be called the TUG group, it's the users group. And then you've got options with Sage support, your product documents. If you didn't get the download for the year-end guide, everything is right here. There's your year-end procedures guide. And don't be afraid to use the help. So I've got the knowledge base, downloads and updates. If you want to see what downloads and updates are available, you can download your products from here if you have permissions to do so. Don't inadvertently start installing it on your workstation, okay? Make sure you know what you're doing here, but you can download from here, so just be careful. If you don't have licenses for a product and you try to download it, it can be dangerous. These have to be installed on your server, so just be really careful, okay, what you're doing there. Okay, I am going to thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and open up for any questions that you may have. And I will stop the recording at this point so we can get that generated. And if you want a copy of the recording, it's rough. You get it with all of my hiccups and my throat clearings and everything, but I will send it to you. You have to request it though. I don't send it automatically. It's a big file, so just let me know.